In the mist-choked valley of Gallows Bend, Montana, a disgraced history professor was about to uncover a secret the law had buried for more than a century. What started as a quiet restoration project on a forgotten 1800s jailhouse took a shocking turn when he came face to face with the ghosts of men who had never truly been laid to rest. Elias Crowe wasn't your typical academic. For nearly 20 years, he had spent his life chasing lost truths across abandoned towns and burned records, known for his relentless curiosity and the scandal that had cost him everything. When he discovered cryptic carvings inside the jail stone walls, messages left by condemned outlaws, he had no idea he was stepping into a feud between justice and vengeance that had outlived its makers. Elias followed the markings deeper into the ruins, unaware that his pursuit of history would unearth a $14 million cache of outlaw gold and the curse that came with it. What began as an attempt to rebuild his reputation would become a descent into the dark heart of frontier law and legacy. The quiet town of Gallows Bend would never be the same after Elias uncovered the fortune and the truth buried beneath its prison floor. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra. Special for you, the auctioneer's gavel struck the block with a hollow crack that echoed through the courtroom like a coffin lid. Closing, sold to Mr. Elias Crowe for 40 cents. A ripple of laughter rolled across the room. Sharp, disbelieving, mocking. 40 cents for a property, even a condemned one, was a joke. Yet Elias Crowe, once a respected history professor turned scandal's casualty, didn't laugh. He adjusted his glasses, tucked the brittle deed into his worn leather notebook, and stood without a word. Redemption, he told himself, often comes dressed as ruin. 2 days later, his car crawled through the mist-soaked valley toward Gallows Bend, Montana, a town left behind by both time and mercy. The mountains loomed like sleeping giants, their shadows stretching across the narrow road. At the valley's edge, a rusted gate stood half open, its sign leaning sideways. Crowe County Jail, Desk 1878. The building beyond it was a corpse of stone and timber. Its roof sagged like a tired man's shoulders. Its windows were blackened sockets that had seen too much. As Elias stepped out of his car, the air itself seemed to hesitate, cold, still, expectant. Inside, the first room had once been the sheriff's office. Now it was a grave of forgotten paperwork. A warped desk overturned, drawers split open, ledgers turned to mulch by rain. Dust hung in the air like ash, swirling in the glow of Elias's lantern. Each step creaked loud enough to feel deliberate, as though the building were listening back. Beyond a rusted iron door lay the holding cells, narrow cages of corroded bars and cold stone. Elias ran his hand along one wall, feeling grooves beneath the dirt. Words scratched deep with something sharper than nails. The law took our gold, not our ghosts. The phrase pulsed with bitterness, carved so violently that the stone still shimmered with pressure. Elias traced each letter carefully. This wasn't the desperate scrawl of a dying man. It was a message, new owner then. The voice startled him. He turned to see a woman standing in the doorway, tall, dark-haired, her braid loose, her clothes practical and dusted with travel. She carried a bundle of faded folders under one arm. "Clara Boone," she said, offering a brief nod. "County archivist. I'm here to confirm the property transfer." Her tone was polite, but her eyes flicked toward the carvings and away again too quickly. "You're related to Sheriff Abram Boone," Elias said carefully. "The one who died in the fire," she finished, her voice tightening. "Yes, my great-grandfather. They said he died defending this jail from outlaws." Elias watched her closely. He'd read the stories, how the jail burned in 1889, supposedly attacked by a gang called the Harlow Riders. But the records never matched. No bodies were found. Before he could ask more, the door creaked open again. A frail old man stepped in, leaning on a cane, Reverend Tobias Finch, the town historian. His white hair caught the lantern light like frost. "You'll find more than rats in these halls, Professor," he said, his voice soft but firm. "Some places remember what men forget." Best you tread lightly. Elias offered a polite smile, but his mind was already racing. He sketched the wall markings in his notebook, the strange patterns, triangles interlocking with crosses, pairs of initials, AB and JH. That night, the storm came. Rain hammered the roof like fists, lightning split the horizon, and the old jail groaned under its own history. The power failed, leaving Elias alone with his lantern's weak glow. He worked late, sorting through fragments of ledgers he'd found under a loose floorboard. But when thunder shook the walls, he froze. A shadow was moving at the end of the corridor. "Clara?" He called. Silence, only the hiss of rain. He raised the lantern. The light trembled, and then he saw it. Fresh scratches on the wall, dripping with moisture as if newly carved. The law's gold, beneath his boots. The words hadn't been there before. Lightning flashed again, blinding white. When his vision cleared, the hallway was empty, but the air smelled faintly of sulfur and candle wax. By morning, fear had turned into fascination. Elias unpacked his camera and began photographing every inch of the graffiti. The carvings weren't random. They were layered, repeating, overlapping like an argument frozen in time. Clara returned that afternoon, skeptical but drawn. Together, they traced the engravings with chalk to make them legible. "This symbol again," Elias murmured, pointing to the initials. "AB and JH, Clara's jaw tightened. Abram Boone and Josiah Harlow. The sheriff and the outlaw. The room seemed to hold its breath, moving from cell to cell. They realized the inscriptions formed fragments of a conversation, a dialogue carved between two doomed men. The last line, barely visible near the floor, read, "Boone's promise died in the dark." Clara's voice faltered. "You think my great-grandfather wrote this? Or confessed through it?" Elias said quietly. Before dusk, Reverend Finch returned, holding a small booklet wrapped in oilcloth. "My grandfather's notes," he said. "He was a boy when the fire took this place. He wrote that he heard men screaming, saying the law had turned outlaw. The brittle pages confirmed the legend. 6 prisoners executed without trial, their gold seized in the name of justice." Clara's hands trembled. "Then he murdered them." Finch's eyes softened. "Depends on whose version of the truth you keep." That night, beneath the sheriff's office, Elias found what neither of them expected, a hidden compartment beneath a loose floorboard. Inside, a rusted tin box containing a parchment and a corroded badge engraved A. Boone. The air in the room seemed to shift, heavy with judgment. Clara whispered, "If that's real." "My family's legacy tree was built on a lie," Elias finished. Outside, the wind howled through the valley like a warning. Somewhere deep within the jail, a metal door clanged shut on its own. And from the darkness, something whispered back. Morning came grey and thin, the light cutting through the cracked windows like a dull blade. Elias sat hunched over the rusted tin box he had pried from beneath the sheriff's office floorboards. Inside lay a torn parchment, its edges burned, marked with 3 words, written in a steady hand. Ledger B, Volume 3, sealed 1889. Clara Boone stood in the doorway, pale from a sleepless night. Her eyes fell on the handwriting and her breath caught. "That's my great-grandfather's script. I've seen it in our archives." Elias nodded. "Then we know where to look next." By noon, they stood inside the county archive, a low, windowless building that smelled of lemon oil, mold, and old secrets. The head archivist, a gray-haired woman with a skeptical frown, reluctantly handed them a locked box labeled Boone Estate. Restricted inside lay piles of tax records, marriage licenses and brittle letters, and at the bottom, wrapped in parchment, a leather-bound ledger. Its spine cracked like dry bone when Elias opened it. The ink had bled with time, but the handwriting remained deliberate, precise. Boone's tone was that of a man writing not to confess, but to control history. Arrangements made with JH first deposit received. 6 to be held until settlement complete. Elias traced the line with his finger. 6 prisoners, but the last jail records listed only 4. Clara leaned closer, her pulse quickening. "So 2 vanished, or never existed on paper," Elias replied. He turned another page. The entries grew stranger. Symbols in the margins, repeated initials, sketches of gold bars arranged in triangles. Over and over, one phrase appeared, Vault 9. Clara whispered the words. He numbered them. Elias nodded slowly. This wasn't just a jail. It was a storage system. When they reached the final entry, the handwriting had changed. Rough, hurried, trembling. June 8th, 1889. Transfer complete. The riders are silent. The law stands unbroken. The room seemed to tighten with the weight of those words. Then a voice broke the silence. Still chasing ghosts, Professor. Elias turned sharply. In the doorway stood a familiar face, a man with a week-old beard and a grin that didn't reach his eyes. Sam Ortega, Elias said, exhaling. Still breaking into places you shouldn't? Sam laughed. Only when you're in them. Heard you bought yourself a haunted jail, Clara blinked. You know him. Former student, Elias explained. Brilliant, impulsive, and allergic to good decisions. Sam set his bag down and cracked his knuckles. Good thing you called me. I brought the tools for decoding old ciphers. Elias raised a brow. You think there's a cipher? I think there's always a cipher. Hours passed as they cross-referenced Boone's symbols against outlaw records and regional maps. Slowly, the ledger's meaning began to emerge, a hidden economy between lawmen and thieves. Boone had struck a deal with Josiah Blackhand Harlow and his gang, promising them protection in exchange for a share of their gold. But when Boone tried to take more than his cut, the alliance turned to blood. The last ledger entries stopped abruptly after payment dispute resolved. Clara's voice was barely a whisper. He killed them. Elias nodded grimly. All 6. Then burned the jail to bury the evidence. Sam looked up from his laptop. That means the gold's still down there, and the vault's real. Before Elias could answer, a faint metallic clang echoed from the hall. Sharp, deliberate. They froze. Was anyone else supposed to be here? Clara whispered. The archivist had gone home hours ago. They moved toward the sound. The back door rattled, then slammed shut. When they reached it, the handle was ice cold, locked from the outside. On the floor lay a single object, a sheriff's badge, its metal darkened with age. Clara knelt, her fingers trembling as she read the engraving. A. Boone. That can't be, she breathed. It was in your box. Elias's voice was low. Someone wants us to know they're watching. They left the archive, under the weight of storm clouds gathering over Gallows Bend. The wind carried dust and the faint scent of rain. Sam's headlights cut through the darkness as they drove back toward the jailhouse. When they arrived, the gate hung open. The old sign swayed in the wind. The name, Crowe County Jail, barely legible beneath streaks of rust. Elias's gut twisted. Someone's been here. They stepped inside. The air was heavy with iron and earth. Muddy footprints trailed from the entrance to the sheriff's office. The floorboards Elias had pried up before had shifted again, but now, beneath them, something glinted faintly. Elias knelt, brushing away the dirt until his fingertips hit cold metal, a trapdoor fused shut with age. Clara crouched beside him, heart pounding. Vault number 9, he nodded. Let's see what secrets you've been keeping. With Sam's help, he forced the crowbar under the seam and pried. The metal screamed as it gave way, releasing a gust of air that smelled of rot and rusted blood. A narrow stairwell spiraled downward into blackness. Sam swallowed hard. Historian's privilege, Professor. You first, Elias smirked faintly. Bravery looks good on you, Sam. One by one, they descended into the dark. The lantern light wavered across rough stone walls. Rusted chains hung like vines. At the end of the corridor lay a circular chamber carved from bedrock, a place untouched by time. The air down there was colder, thicker, watching. The beam of Elias's lantern passed over 6 skeletons, seated upright in a ring, shackled at the wrists. Their skulls faced the center, where crates marked U.S. Treasury were stacked like coffins. Clara's gasp echoed through the chamber. He executed them here. Elias stepped closer, his voice hollow, and sealed them with their gold. At the base of one skeleton lay a small leather-bound journal. Its cover bore the initials J.H. Josiah Harlow, Elias whispered. The outlaw himself. He opened the brittle pages and read, "The law took our gold, not our ghosts." Boone promised safety. He gave us chains instead. Thunder rumbled far above. The light flickered. Sam's voice broke the silence. "We need to report this." "Not yet," Elias said, staring at the crates. "History only speaks once if you let the wrong people write it." Then from above came the slow creak of wood. The trapdoor slammed shut. Clara screamed. The lantern went out, and in the blackness, somewhere between the living and the dead, chains began to drag. When light returned, it came in the form of Sam's trembling flashlight, a thin beam slicing through the choking dark. The trapdoor above them was sealed tight again, its edges fused with fresh heat, as if welded shut by unseen hands. Clara's voice shook. "Someone locked us in." Elias's mind raced. The air smelled of sulfur and old smoke, and from somewhere deep in the chamber came the slow clang, clang, clang of a chain swaying against stone. He raised his lantern and saw that one of the skeletons had shifted. Its skull, which had faced the center moments ago, now looked directly at them. Sam stumbled back. "That thing just moved." "It's the air," Elias said quickly, though his voice betrayed him. "Pressure shift." But even he didn't believe it. A whisper rippled through the chamber, faint, broken, like breath over dust. Elias turned the lantern slowly, and the words seemed to emerge from the stone itself. "The oath binds all hands." Law or outlaw, gold or grave. Clara pressed herself against the wall, eyes wide. "Did you hear that?" Elias swallowed hard. We all did. He swung the lantern toward the far wall. Symbols glowed faintly under the grime. 7 circles interlocking, the same pattern carved into the cells upstairs. But here the center circle was darker, filled with something thick and dried. Blood. Sam aimed his flashlight closer. "That's Boone's seal, isn't it?" "The sheriff's mark," Elias nodded. "A blood pact." He sealed them here himself. As he spoke, the temperature dropped. Their breaths fogged. From above came a sharp metallic sound, the sound of footsteps on the floorboards directly over their heads. Clara whispered, "Someone's in the jailhouse." Sam gritted his teeth. "We're not alone down here either," because the chains were moving again, slowly dragging across the floor, circling the chamber like something alive. "Lanterns out." Elias hissed. They killed the light, plunging into near darkness. Only the faint glow of Sam's phone screen remained, reflecting the outlines of the skeletal ring. The air pulsed. Then a voice, low, gravelly, wrong, whispered from the black. Boone's blood broke the promise. "The gold shall burn the oath clean." The floor quaked beneath their feet. Cracks split through the stone, and a thin vein of molten light glowed from below. Elias grabbed Clara's hand. "Run!" They bolted toward the stairwell, Sam stumbling behind. Elias shoved at the trapdoor, but it wouldn't move. The metal was hot to the touch. Then from above, something heavy scraped, and the door burst open. A beam of daylight poured down. A woman's voice shouted, "This way!" It was Mara Kincaid, her face pale beneath the flicker of her flashlight. They scrambled up, gasping into the storm-soaked air of the sheriff's office. Rain pounded against the cracked windows, and thunder rolled through the valley. Mara slammed the hatch shut behind them, breathing hard. "You 3 are lucky I tracked you. The whole town's talking about you digging up the Boone site." Clara's voice trembled. "We didn't just find gold. We found bodies." Mara's gaze flicked to Elias. "You found something worse, didn't you?" He didn't answer, just handed her the journal he'd taken from the vault. Mara opened it, eyes scanning the page. "Boone took our gold, not our ghosts." She exhaled shakily. "My grandmother used to say that line every time she passed this jail." Elias frowned. "Your grandmother was from Gallows Bend?" Mara nodded slowly. "Her name was Ruth Boone." The silence hit like thunder. Clara stared at her. "You're one of us." Mara's jaw tightened. "I was raised not to talk about it. The Boones and the Crows built this town together. But the deal between them, that was made with blood." Elias looked at her sharply. "What deal?" Mara hesitated. "Boone didn't act alone. He was funded by Elias Crowe, the man who took over as sheriff after him. Boone swore an oath to protect the town's wealth. Crowe swore to protect its reputation. When Boone died, Crowe inherited both. Crowe, Elias repeated softly. As in Crowe County Jail, Mara nodded grimly. This place was his monument, built over Boone's grave. The curse didn't die with the fire. It just changed names. A flash of lightning illuminated the room, and in that brief glare, Elias saw it. New writing carved into the wall beside the sheriff's desk. Fresh vault. 9. Sealed under God's law. The letters dripped as if they'd been carved seconds ago. Clara's voice was barely a whisper. It wasn't there before. Elias turned toward Mara. How did you find us? Mara hesitated again. Someone called it in. Said they heard voices in the jail. When I got here, your car was outside, door open. Then I heard the trapdoor slam. Sam rubbed his temples. So, whoever called you was the one who locked us down there. The storm outside intensified, thunder rolling like cannon fire. Elias walked to the window and froze. Across the yard, through sheets of rain, a figure stood beneath the gallows beam, still watching. Lightning flashed. The figure vanished. He turned back, voice low. We're being watched. Whoever's keeping this secret isn't done yet. Mara holstered her gun. Then we find out who's still protecting Boone's legacy. Elias grabbed the lantern and the ledger, and what the curse is really guarding. The storm screamed through the valley as the four of them stepped out of the jailhouse into a night that seemed to breathe. Behind them, the old building moaned against the wind. Inside, deep beneath the stone, 6 skeletons sat in perfect silence, and in the darkness between them, gold began to glow once more. The storm broke sometime after midnight, leaving Gallows Bend drenched and ghostly beneath a blanket of fog. The courthouse clock struck 12, each toll echoing through the hollow streets like a funeral bell. Elias Crowe stood before the Boone family estate, a crumbling Victorian relic on the hill, its once white walls streaked grey with mould. Clara had insisted they come here. If the curse started with my family, she said, we end it there. The porch groaned under their weight as they stepped inside. The air smelled of cedar dust and camphor, the scent of generations too proud to decay. Portraits lined the hallway. Stern-faced men in uniforms, women in lace, all bearing the same unyielding Boone stare. At the end of the hall, a single portrait dominated the wall, Sheriff Abram Boone himself. His eyes were piercing even beneath the film of dust, his badge gleaming faintly in the painted light. Clara's voice trembled. They used to say he was a hero, that he brought justice to a lawless land. Elias studied the portrait, then whispered, or buried the truth beneath it. They moved through the parlor, searching for records or letters. The old floorboards creaked like sighs. Sam followed close behind, snapping photographs, while Mara kept her hand on her weapon. Habit more than caution. In the study, Elias found it, a false wall panel behind the bookshelf. With a gentle push, it opened to reveal a hidden cabinet filled with sealed envelopes bound by wax. Each bore initials written in the same steady hand as Boone's journal. One envelope stood out, marked M.K. Mara froze. That's my initials. Elias handed it to her. Open it! She tore it open with trembling fingers. Inside were 2 documents, a telegram and a letter. The telegram was dated March 3rd, 1989. Exactly 100 years after the fire. Reopen vault site. Ensure containment. Line maintained by oath. The second document was a letter written in faded ink. Signed A.B. Abram Boone. Mara's voice cracked as she read aloud, To those who bear the badge after me, the gold must never surface. The rider's silence preserves the town's soul. I spilled my own kin's blood to seal that vow. Should the blood of Boone rise against the oath, she too shall be buried beneath it. Clara's face drained of color. He killed his own? Elias whispered. He meant the women in his bloodline, you. The words hung heavy between them. The old house creaked as if acknowledging the truth. Then from the corner of the room came a faint click. Mara spun, weapon drawn. "Who's there?" No response. The window was cracked open. Rain dripped from the sill, and on the glass was a smudged handprint. Sam knelt by it. Fresh! Before they could react, the front door burst open. A shadow stepped through, framed by lightning, a woman in a dark raincoat, her badge glinting. "Mara," Elias breathed. "You're—" Mara turned in confusion. "I'm here." The newcomer's face was identical. Same sharp eyes. Same voice. The second Mara smiled faintly. "Took you long enough to find the truth." The real Mara raised her gun. "Who the hell are you?" The double tilted her head. "Family." For a split second, the air shimmered, and the figure vanished. The gun lowered. Sam exhaled shakily. "What the hell was that?" Elias didn't answer. He was staring at the portrait of Abram Boone. Lightning flashed again, and in that flash, he saw it. Boone's painted eyes now bleeding faint streaks of gold down the canvas. "Clara," he whispered, "I think your great-grandfather's oath wasn't just a promise." The wall behind the portrait rattled, then cracked open like a hinge. Dust poured out, revealing a narrow staircase spiraling down. Clara backed away. "That wasn't there before." Elias grabbed the lantern. "We're not leaving without seeing where it leads." They descended carefully, the smell of damp stone rising around them. The stairwell ended in a small underground chamber lined with wooden shelves. Most held decayed boxes, but one crate remained sealed, its surface branded with the mark V9, Vault 9. Sam crouched beside it. He moved part of the vault here. Elias pried it open. Inside lay gold bars, still gleaming despite a century of dust. But beneath them, something else. A bone-white skull with a sheriff's star nailed to its forehead. Clara gasped. "He buried him here." Elias nodded grimly. "The outlaw Boone murdered. Josiah Harlow, the curse's first victim." Mara lifted the lantern higher, revealing more writing on the back wall, carved in Boone's own hand. "The oath is the curse. The curse is the oath. Gold binds both." The lantern flickered. The air grew colder. A whisper rolled through the chamber, the same voice they'd heard in the vault. "Law took our gold. Now, law must pay." The shelves rattled. The floor trembled. Sam grabbed Clara's arm. "Time to go, Professor!" They rushed up the stairs, the light flickering violently behind them. When they reached the study, the portrait of Boone had fallen to the floor, its frame shattered. Beneath it, the paint still dripped, but the face was gone, burned clean away. Mara's breathing was ragged. "We're running out of time." Elias met her eyes. "Then we stop running." Outside, the storm gathered again, the air heavy with thunder. Clara turned toward the house, her voice steady despite the fear. "My great-grandfather built this curse. I'll be the one to end it." Morning bled grey through the storm clouds as Elias, Clara, Mara, and Sam drove down the slick mountain road toward Gallows Bend's diner, the only place still open at dawn. The neon sign buzzed faintly, casting red light across wet asphalt. They slipped inside, soaked and silent. The diner was nearly empty, save for a waitress humming softly to the radio and the scent of burnt coffee drifting through the air. They took a booth by the window. Steam rose from their cups, but no one touched them. Sam spread out the documents they'd taken from the Boone house, Boone's final letter, the telegram, and photographs of the vault beneath the jail. "So let's sum this up," he said grimly. "Boone murdered 6 men, burned the jail to cover it up, made a blood oath to keep the gold secret, and cursed his descendants in the process. And we just reopened the whole thing." Clara stared at her reflection in the coffee. "He didn't just curse his family," she whispered. "He cursed this entire town." Mara leaned back in the booth, eyes shadowed. "Then the town's been living on borrowed time for over a century." The bell over the door chimed. A man stepped inside, shaking rain from his coat. He was tall, grey-haired, with the weary confidence of someone used to command. His eyes met Elias's, and recognition sparked. "Professor Crowe," he said evenly. "You've been busy." Elias straightened. Judge Harold Crowe. The judge gave a polite smile, though it didn't reach his eyes. Word travels fast in a small town. Vaults, skeletons, fires in old places best left closed. He looked at Clara, and a boon of all people, stirring them again. Clara's jaw clenched. "You knew, didn't you, about what Abram did?" The judge took off his hat, setting it carefully on the counter. "My family's known since the day this town was founded. The oath was passed from Boone to Crowe, from sheriff to judge, to protect Gallows Bend from itself." "Protect?" Mara scoffed. "You call covering up murder protection?" The judge turned toward her slowly. "You're a Boone too, deputy, don't forget that. Your blood's part of this curse, whether you like it or not." Elias leaned forward. "What exactly was that oath? What are we protecting the town from?" The judge sighed. "That gold wasn't normal. It wasn't minted, wasn't lawful. It was melted from offerings stolen from a tribal burial site west of here. Sacred metal. Boone thought he could turn it into fortune, but the ones who touched it started to see things. Shadows that moved when no one did. Voices that whispered from stone. They said the gold had a soul, and it wanted payment." Sam frowned. "You're saying it's haunted?" "I'm saying it's hungry." Clara's voice was tight. "Then Boone killed the riders to feed it." The judge's gaze darkened. "He killed them to contain it. But curses don't stay buried. They spread, through names, through legacy." A rumble of thunder rolled outside. The lights flickered. Elias asked quietly, "And what happens now that the vault's open again?" The judge's eyes met his. "The oath breaks, and when the oath breaks, the dead remember who betrayed them." He rose, slipping on his coat. "Leave Gallows Bend, Professor. Tonight. Take your ghosts with you." "Judge," Elias said, "you can't just walk away from this." Crowe turned sharply. "I'm not walking away. I'm waiting." "For what?" "For the seventh rider to return." He left without another word, the bell over the door jingling softly behind him. Mara stared after him, voice shaking. "He's gone mad." Elias shook his head. "No, he's terrified." Outside, lightning split the horizon, and for an instant Elias swore he saw something in the reflection of the window. A dark rider on horseback, standing motionless in the street, staring back at him. Then it was gone. He whispered, "We're running out of time." By nightfall the fog returned, thick, rolling, alive. The group gathered once more at the jailhouse ruins, its charred bones jutting out against the dying light. Amelia Reeves, the journalist who had tracked the story for months, met them there. Her raincoat clung to her shoulders, camera slung at her side. "If you're right," she said, "and there's truth to the curse, I want it documented." "Every word." Elias shook his head. "This isn't a story anymore. It's a reckoning." They stepped inside the remains of the jail. The air was metallic, charged, humming with unseen current. The ground where the vault had been sealed now pulsed faintly beneath the dirt, as if something below still breathed. Clara knelt beside the cracked stone. "The sigil's still here, barely." "Boone's seal." Mara's voice was low. "We broke it when we opened the vault. If it's feeding on bloodlines, it'll come for us next." Elias studied the markings. "Then we reseal it, the same way Boone did." "With blood," Sam's eyes widened. "You mean not death," Elias said. "Just a bond. The same oath, but reversed. To free, not contain." Clara nodded, determination flickering in her eyes. "Then we do it. We end what he started." A sudden clang echoed through the ruins, the sound of metal striking stone. Amelia raised her camera toward the noise. "Did you hear—" Her voice cut off. At the far end of the corridor, a figure stood in the haze, tall, broad, cloaked in black. Steam rose from his boots where they touched the ground. His eyes burned faintly gold beneath the shadow of a hat. The seventh rider had come home. His voice was a rasping echo, the sound of fire through bone. "Boone's blood breaks the seal. Boone's blood ends the debt." Mara lifted her gun, but Elias raised a hand. "Don't, he's not alive." The rider stepped closer, his spurs scraping stone. Gold dust drifted from his coat like ash. Law took from the dead. Now the dead take from the law, Amelia whispered. Oh, God. And began filming, the rider's gaze fixed on Clara. The blood of Boone, the final promise. Lightning cracked overhead, illuminating his hollow face, half skull, half flame. Elias shouted over the storm. Boone bound you here. It doesn't have to end with her. The rider's revolver lifted, the barrel glowing like molten gold. It ends with truth. He fired. The bullet whistled past Clara, striking one of the gold bars still embedded in the rubble. The metal flared, splitting into blinding light. The ground shook violently as the sigil beneath them reawakened, glowing brighter with every heartbeat. Elias stumbled. He's triggering it. He's burning the oath open. Sam lunged for his gear bag, fumbling for a flare. We need light, now! The flare burst crimson, scattering the fog. The rider reeled, hissing like steam. Elias grabbed Clara's hand. The journal! Read the final lines, the reversal. Clara tore the journal open, her voice breaking as she shouted the words Boone had written in his confession. Blood sealed the law in sin. Blood shall free it in truth. The rider screamed, a sound that tore through the night, shaking the earth itself. His body fractured like glass, gold light pouring from the cracks. Amelia's camera flickered, capturing his last words before the world exploded in white. The oath is paid. Silence. When the light faded, the rider was gone. The vault sigil had cooled to ash. Rain began to fall, soft, cleansing, endless. Elias fell to his knees, trembling. It's over, but Clara, her voice faint, whispered, No, it's changed. They turned toward her. Blood dripped from a shallow cut on her palm, where the sigil's glow had burned against her skin. Mara stepped closer. Clara, what did you do? I finished the oath, she said. But Boone's curse doesn't vanish. It passes. Someone has to guard what's left. The wind shifted. The storm eased. Elias looked at her, grief and understanding mixing in his eyes. Then it chose you, Clara smiled weakly. Maybe it was always going to. Behind them, the first rays of dawn broke through the clouds, striking the ruins of the jail. The gold that had cursed generations shimmered once, then turned dull and black, crumbling into dust. Sam let out a shaking breath. So that's it. It's gone. Elias looked toward the horizon, where sunlight spread across Gallows Bend. No, he said softly. It's forgiven. The town below stirred awake, unaware that its ghosts had finally found rest. But as the group turned to leave, the faintest echo rose from the valley, the sound of hooves fading into morning mist. Great. Here's the cinematic. Emotionally charged finale of Echo, combining parts 7 to 8 into one continuous 2,000-word narrative arc. This section closes the story, a reckoning between truth, legacy, and redemption. The sun rose over Gallows Bend, pale and uncertain, as if the sky itself didn't trust the new day. The valley steamed with fog. From a distance, the ruins of the Crowe jail looked quiet, almost peaceful. But anyone who had stood inside those walls knew better. Peace was never what that place offered. It only paused between hauntings. Elias Crowe stood by his car at the edge of the property, staring at the blackened stones. The others were still asleep, back at Reverend Finch's rectory, exhausted from the night before. He hadn't slept at all. His mind replayed the rider's final scream, the blinding light, the words carved into his memory. The oath is paid. If it was truly over, why did the earth still feel restless beneath his feet? He exhaled, breath clouding in the cold air, and whispered to no one, Redemption never comes easy, does it? A car door slammed behind him. Clara Boone approached, her arm bandaged, her face pale but resolute. She looked older now, not in years, but in the weight she carried. You didn't wait for me, she said quietly. Elias smiled faintly. Didn't think you'd come. I almost didn't, she admitted. But you'd only make a mess without me. They shared a brief, fragile laugh. For a long moment they simply stared at the ruins. Smoke still rose from the cracks, faint and ghost-like. Clara spoke first. There's something left down there, isn't there? Elias nodded. Boone's confession ended mid-sentence. The ledger mentioned another name, Someone who survived, she frowned. The seventh rider? Silas Crowe, Elias said softly. The man who became sheriff after Boone. He's the one who built this place, my namesake. The Crowe line didn't just inherit Boone's secret. We protected it, Clara's eyes widened. You're saying, Elias nodded grimly. I'm part of the oath too. Before she could respond, headlights cut through the fog. A black SUV rolled up the dirt road and stopped beside them. The doors opened, and 3 men stepped out, 2 in plain suits, 1 in a brown coat with a U.S. Marshal's badge glinting in the dawn. The Marshal's tone was brisk. Professor Crowe, we're here on federal order. This site's under investigation. Elias exchanged a glance with Clara. Investigation for what? Unregistered excavation, the Marshal said. Possible theft of government property. We received a report that gold artifacts were removed from this location. Clara stepped forward. That gold is cursed! The Marshal raised a hand. Ma'am, I don't deal in curses. Just evidence. The agents began unloading equipment. Scanners, floodlights, cameras. Elias's stomach tightened. Someone had tipped them off. Mara arrived minutes later, limping slightly but fierce as ever. She flashed her badge, demanding an explanation. Who authorized this dig? The Marshal ignored her. This site's federal jurisdiction now. Like hell it is, she snapped. As the argument escalated, Elias drifted toward the ruins. Something deep below was calling. Faint, rhythmic, like a heartbeat muffled under stone. He felt it vibrate through his boots. Clara, he murmured. It's not done. She followed his gaze. Then what are we hearing? The vault, Elias said. It's waking up again. By late afternoon, the agents had set up floodlights over the crater that had once been the jailhouse floor. They intended to drill down and recover historical artifacts. None of them noticed the subtle shimmer rising from the pit, a golden haze like heat over asphalt. Elias and Clara slipped past the barriers, unnoticed in the chaos. Sam joined them moments later, breathless, clutching his camera. You sure about this? He asked. You said the curse was sealed. It was, Elias replied. But they're breaking the seal all over again. They climbed down into the crater, the air growing hotter with every step. The walls pulsed faintly, veins of gold glowing beneath the rock like molten arteries. Clara knelt beside a crack and touched the stone. It was warm, alive. Suddenly a voice echoed through the hollow. You shouldn't be here. Judge Harold Crowe stood at the edge of the crater, his coat whipping in the wind. His face was drawn, eyes bloodshot. Elias stared up at him. You told us to leave it buried, and you didn't listen, the judge said hoarsely. Now they're doing what Boone never dared. They're digging it up for profit. Then help us stop them, Clara pleaded. The judge shook his head slowly. You can't stop what's already begun. Once the seal is broken, the pack demands blood again. Boone's, Crowe's, yours. Lightning cracked across the sky. A tremor rippled through the ground. The agents above shouted as machinery toppled and lights burst. The golden veins flared bright, illuminating the judge's face. He looked down at Elias. It's not a curse, Professor. It's a covenant. It feeds on guilt. And this town has never stopped sinning. Then the ground split open. A roar of molten light erupted upward, swallowing the judge where he stood. His scream was drowned in fire. Elias grabbed Clara and pulled her back as the crater deepened into a glowing chasm. The air filled with the scent of burning metal. Sam yelled over the chaos. We have to get out. But something rose from the pit. At first, it looked like smoke, then bone, then gold. A figure took shape, its eyes twin embers of molten light. A badge glowed on its chest. Sheriff Abram Boone. Elias froze. No! He's dead, Clara whispered. Not enough. The apparition's voice rolled like thunder. Boone's law was written in gold. Crowe's justice was bought with it. Now both shall pay. Around them the earth split wider. The agents above screamed as the ground devoured their equipment. One fell, vanishing into the light. Boone's spirit stepped forward, his body half fire, half shadow. Blood for gold. Oath for oath, Elias shouted. You damned this town for your pride. Boone's gaze burned into him. I saved it. You murdered for it, Elias spat. You chained men to your lie, and now you call that salvation? Boone raised his hand. The air shimmered. Elias's knees buckled as visions flashed through his mind. Men screaming in cells, fire consuming wood, gold melting like wax, and Boone kneeling before the burning jail. Carving the oath into his palm, Elias fell to the ground. Gasping, Clara knelt beside him, tears streaking her soot-stained face. "Stop it! He's not your enemy!" Boone's fiery eyes flickered toward her. "You carry my blood." "You opened the seal." "And I'll close it," she said, standing. "You want your legacy buried? Then it ends with me." She stepped to the edge of the fissure, raising her bleeding hand. Elias reached for her. "Clara, don't!" She looked back at him, eyes calm. Every generation paid for what Boone did. It's time someone forgave him. The spirit hesitated. "Forgiveness?" Clara's voice steadied. "You don't need vengeance. You need release." She pressed her hand to the golden light. It burned through her bandage instantly. The chamber erupted in brightness so fierce that even Boone's form began to crumble, fragments of light scattering into the wind. The sheriff's voice softened, distant now. "Law without mercy is its own sin." Then he was gone. The light dimmed, the fissure sealing itself with a hiss of cooling stone. The earth fell silent once more. Elias caught Clara as she collapsed, her body trembling but alive. He whispered, "You did it." She smiled weakly. "We did." Days passed. The federal team never returned. The ground had swallowed their equipment and left nothing behind but scorch marks and silence. News reports called it a subsidence incident. No mention of curses, no mention of gold. The ruins were declared unsafe and sealed with concrete. Elias, Clara, Mara, and Sam met one last time at Reverend Finch's rectory. The old man sat by the fire, his eyes wet with weary pride. "You gave this town its soul back," he said softly. "But souls remember. Be sure yours can bear it." Mara poured herself coffee, staring into the cup. "So it's over." Elias looked at Clara, as much as anything ever is. Sam handed over his camera. "All the footage is here. What do you want me to do with it?" Elias took it and tossed it into the fireplace. The flames swallowed the evidence. "Let the dead rest." Sam didn't argue. Outside, dawn painted the valley gold. But it wasn't the cursed kind. It was clean, fragile, the kind that promised something better. Clara stood on the porch, watching the mist rise. Her bandaged hand still bore the faint outline of the sigil burned into her skin. Elias joined her quietly. She said, "Boone's voice hasn't come back since that night." "That's because you freed him," Elias said. She shook her head. "Or because he's waiting." Elias glanced toward the hills where the jail once stood. The fog shifted, and for a heartbeat he thought he saw riders in the distance, 7 silhouettes fading into the light. He didn't mention it. Some truths belong to silence. Clara turned to him. "What will you do now?" Elias smiled faintly. "Maybe teach again. Though I don't think they make textbooks for what we've seen." She laughed softly. "No, they don't." Mara stepped out, her badge glinting in the sunrise. "Town council's renaming the place," she said. "They're dropping Crow County, just Gallows Bend. Fresh start." Elias nodded. "About time." Finch's church bell rang in the distance. Once, twice, 7 times, and then stopped. Sam looked toward it uneasily. "You hear that?" Elias smiled. "I think it's just saying goodbye." Weeks later, Elias received a letter with no return address. Inside was a single object, a sheriff's star badge, tarnished but unmistakable. A Boone was engraved across the front. Beneath it, a note in neat, modern handwriting. "Some debts never die. They just wait to be remembered. M.K." He folded the note carefully, looking out his window toward the horizon. The evening light caught the hills, and for just a moment the earth shimmered gold. But it wasn't threatening this time. It was peaceful. Like the land exhaling after a century of holding its breath, Elias whispered, "Rest now." Then he closed the blinds, turned off the lamp, and let the darkness settle. Quiet, ordinary, unbroken. In the valley below, Gallows Bend slept. The curse was gone, the gold lost, and the ghosts at last were free. But if you listened closely, on certain nights when the wind passed through the canyons just right, you could still hear it, faint and distant, the sound of hooves fading toward the horizon, not in anger, Not in vengeance, just home. Up next, we have two more incredible stories that are waiting for you. Just click the image you want to watch, and it will take you there. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to subscribe. It would mean a lot.